She said the prenatal yoga was for our future, but the instructor was teaching her how to leave me. A lesson she learned with every mindful breath and gentle stretch in that sun-drenched, lavender-scented studio I paid for. The pregnancy was a miracle, one we'd stopped daring to hope for after 3 years of negative tests and a silence in our home that grew heavier each month. When Chloe placed the test with its two bold lines in my hand that Tuesday morning, I wept. I actually fell to my knees on the kitchen tile and wept with a joy so profound it felt like pain. In that moment, the world wasn't just right, it was perfect. We were going to be a family. Chloe, always meticulous, a planner, declared she would do everything by the book. The best vitamins, the organic diet, the right exercises. I want to connect with this baby, with my body properly, she said, her hands already cradling the invisible swell of her stomach. I've heard amazing things about this prenatal yoga studio. Sacred space. It's supposed to be transformative. I didn't hesitate. Transformative was what we needed, what she needed. I saw the light in her eyes, a light that had been dimmed by the long struggle, and I would have paid for a private instructor on the moon. Sacred space was as expensive as it sounded, but seeing her pack her chic yoga bag each Tuesday and Thursday evening filled me with a sense of pride. I was providing. I was building the perfect foundation for our child. She'd return home hours later, not sweaty, but glowing, her skin dewy, her movements fluid. "How was it?" I'd ask, kissing her forehead. "Incredible," she'd sigh, sinking into the couch. "Liam, the instructor, he just has this energy. He understands what the female body's going through on such a deep level. It's not just exercise, it's preparation. For birth, for motherhood, for everything." She talked about Liam often. His calming voice, his intuitive adjustments, his philosophy of surrender and strength. I was grateful. Profoundly, naively grateful. This man was helping my wife carry our child in peace. I imagined him as some serene, ascetic figure, probably in his 50s, draped in linen, all wisdom and no threat. The checks I wrote were a small price for her radiant calm. As the months passed, the calm deepened, but it began to feel different. It wasn't the calm of peaceful anticipation. It was the calm of absolute focus, of a chess player thinking 10 moves ahead. Our conversations about the future names, nurseries, schools became shorter, more perfunctory. She was physically present, but her mind seemed elsewhere, orbiting a different future. I chalked it up to pregnancy brain, to the profound inward journey she was on. My role, I believed, was to be the stable, supportive earth to her shifting water. The first crack was a piece of paper, a receipt she'd accidentally folded into a magazine about childbirth I was leafing through. It wasn't from Sacred Space. It was from a high-end travel agency detailing a non-refundable deposit for the Serenity Resort and Villa, Bali. The date was for 11 weeks after her due date. The booking was for a post-natal wellness retreat for 30 days. Two names were on the itinerary, Chloe Bennett and Liam Archer. The total cost was staggering, a number that represented a year of my savings, of our savings. The baby's college fund evaporating into villa suites and private meditation sessions. I stood in the living room, the paper trembling in my hand, the cheerful graphic of a palm tree a mockery. My mind tried to latch onto explanations. A gift? A group retreat where they just listed the instructor? But the "for-to" was specific. The timing was precise, far enough after the birth to travel, early enough to escape the sleepless newborn phase with me. The betrayal didn't hit me as a wave of anger, but as a systemic failure, a complete and total shutdown of my understanding of reality. The yoga wasn't for our future. It was the planning session for hers, with him. I became a spy in my own home, a role that filled me with self-loathing even as I executed it with cold precision. I checked our shared bank account. The monthly payments to Sacred Space were there, but so were smaller, regular transfers to a new account I'd never seen, a joint account under the names Chloe Bennett and Liam Archer. My money from the account that paid our mortgage was seeding their escape fund. I accessed her email. The password was still our dog's name, and my birthday, a relic of a trust now dead. The correspondence was a masterclass in duplicity. Liam wasn't a serene elder. He was 32, handsome in a carefully curated, soulful way. Their emails were not about yoga poses. They were about logistics, flight options that would accommodate a newborn, legal consultations about relocating a child's residence internationally, discussions of how to manage the emotional fallout with the father. That was me, reduced to an emotional fallout zone. They spoke of the life they would build in Bali, of the wellness consultancy they would start together, funded by the settlement she was sure to get. My wife, my pregnant wife, was discussing divorce settlements with her yoga instructor while I assembled a crib late into the night, my heart swelling with stupid, hopeful love. The most devastating document was a birth and transition plan. It wasn't a medical plan, it was a tactical manifesto. It outlined how Chloe would use the emotional vulnerability and fatigue of new fatherhood to create a narrative of my instability. It listed dates for when she would begin expressing concerns about my bonding with the baby to her midwife, creating a paper trail. It detailed how Liam would be presented as a crucial support system, a male maternal figure, slowly integrating him into the picture before the big reveal. The prenatal classes, the calm, the connection, it was all world building for the story they would tell to the courts, to our families, to everyone. That I was the distant, unprepared father, and Liam was the natural partner in her parenting journey. Our child, my unborn son or daughter, was a pawn in their business plan for a new life. The emotional discovery was a physical sensation, a freezing cold that started in my gut and spread outwards until my fingers were numb. I didn't confront her. Confrontation would lead to tears, to denials, to an accelerated timeline. They had a plan. I needed a better one. Theirs was built on deception and my predictable, supportive compliance. Mine would be built on letting their own plan become the instrument of their destruction. I started by becoming the perfect expectant father. I attended every doctor's appointment, beaming with pride, asking thoughtful questions, my phone always out to take pictures of sonograms. I documented everything. I created a shared digital photo album, flooding it with images of the nursery coming together, of me reading pregnancy books, of us at baby care classes. I was constructing an irrefutable archive of my devotion, my readiness, my stability. I secretly recorded conversations where Chloe, prompted by my gentle, loving questions, would talk about her hopes for the baby, our shared dreams, a digital paper trail of her professed commitment to our family, directly contradicting the evidence in her emails. I then turned to Liam. His business, Sacred Space, was built on a facade of holistic purity. A few days spent in online yoga forums and a discreet conversation with a private investigator revealed a different man. Liam Archer had a history. A previous studio in another state had closed amid rumors of inappropriate relationships with clients. There were two former clients, women who had left quietly after intensive private retreats that blurred professional lines. They were reluctant to talk, but they talked. I collected their statements not to use yet, but to understand my enemy. He was a predator who used spirituality as a lure, and my wife, in her vulnerable, hopeful state, was his perfect target, or perhaps his perfect partner. My revenge would not be a shout. It would be a silent, surgical strike that would collapse their fantasy world from within, using the very pillars they were building it on. I started with money. I quietly, legally separated our finances. I opened a new account in my name only and diverted my salary. I left enough in the joint account to avoid suspicion, but the lifeblood of their Bali fund was cut off. Then I became a benefactor. Through an anonymous LLC set up by my lawyer, I contacted Liam with a proposition, a fake venture capitalist interested in scaling the Sacred Space model globally. I offered a significant investment, contingent on a full audited business plan and a deep dive into his professional background. The greedy gleam in his eyes was almost audible through the encrypted emails. He took the bait, spending weeks preparing, distracted from Chloe, from their plan. Meanwhile, I fed Chloe's growing anxiety about money. I mentioned, with careful casualness, a potential setback at work, a project falling through. I watched the panic flicker in her eyes, not for us, but for her escape plan. The masterpiece, however, was the intervention. I went to Chloe's parents. I presented myself as a concerned, heartbroken husband. I didn't show them the emails about Bali or the legal plans. That would have made them defensive, protective of their daughter. Instead, I showed them the evidence of Liam's past, the statements from the other women, the rumors about his previous studio. I framed it as, I think Chloe is being manipulated in a vulnerable state. This man has a history. He's isolating her, and I'm worried for her and the baby's safety. I appealed to their protective instincts, not as her betrayer, but as her protector. They were horrified. They saw me not as the enemy, but as the besieged ally. I did the same with her closest friend, with her sister. I created a unified front of concern, all aimed at Liam the predator, carefully shielding Chloe from the worst of their judgment, painting her as a victim. This was crucial. It cut off her support system for the narrative she and Liam were building. Now, if she tried to paint me as unstable, her own family would see it as the manipulative gaslighting of a dangerous man. The final act was at the baby shower. It was a lavish affair her mother insisted on, held in our backyard. Liam was there, of course, introduced as the amazing instructor who's been Chloe's rock. He moved through the crowd with a practiced, serene smile. I played the gracious, slightly overwhelmed dad-to-be. Then during the gift opening, my phone rang. I made a show of looking at it, my face falling. "It's the office," I said, loud enough for those nearby to hear. "The Japanese investors, they're insisting on a call now. I'm so sorry, honey." I kissed Chloe's cheek, giving Liam a harried nod. I went inside to my office, but I didn't take a call. I activated the sequence. First, I sent the compiled dossier on Liam, his history, the financial discrepancies in his business I'd uncovered through my VC due diligence. The fact he was facing a serious audit from the IRS to every single email address I had for the women in that room, and to the local wellness magazine that had recently featured him. I sent it from the anonymous LLC, the subject line, "For the safety of our community." Then I went to the sound system connected to the backyard speakers. I had pre-recorded a message, not my voice, a computer-generated neutral voice. As Chloe held up a tiny onesie, smiling for a photo, the gentle music faded and the voice filled the air, clear and calm. "A message for Liam Archer. This is a notification from the Family Court Services Division. Your petition for expedited review of the Bennett relocation case has been denied. Full custody investigations prioritize the documented, primary caregiver's established environment. All international travel with a minor child is hereby enjoined pending the full hearing in 12 months. A copy of this injunction has been forwarded to all relevant passport and border control agencies." The voice cut off. The silence was absolute. Every head swiveled to Liam. His serene mask shattered into pure, unvarnished shock and terror. Chloe's face was a frozen mask of horror. The room was a tableau of confusion. Her mother stood up, her face pale. What relocation case? What is this?" Liam was stuttering. "It's a mistake, a horrible prank." But the seed was planted. The perfect, serene future they'd envisioned was publicly exposed as a messy, litigious, and now legally stalled battle. The illusion was broken. I walked back out then, looking confused. "What happened? I heard a weird noise on the system." The shower ended in a hushed, chaotic whisper. Liam fled. Chloe was surrounded by her family, not with congratulations, but with urgent, worried questions. The narrative was no longer hers to control. In the following days, the fallout was atomic. Liam's studio was flooded with cancellations. The magazine retracted his feature. The VC funding vanished. He was exposed, financially and professionally ruined. Chloe, faced with the collapse of her escape plan, the wrath of her family, and the cold, hard legal reality I had fabricated. The injunction was a fake, but the fear was real. Broke. She confessed everything in heaving, ugly sobs. Not out of remorse, but because the walls had closed in. She was trapped in the life she'd tried to escape. But now it was a life where everyone knew, where I knew. The divorce was swift. My lawyer, armed with the mountain of evidence I'd collected, the financial scheming, the plan to alienate me from my child, secured me full custody. The court saw a calculated plot, and she was its architect. Liam was nowhere to be found by the time the papers were served. He'd left the state, his reputation in tatters. I am a single father now. My daughter Ilara is 6 months old. She has her mother's eyes, but when she smiles, it's a pure, uncomplicated joy that knows nothing of lavender-scented betrayals or Bali sunsets. The yoga studio is closed, replaced by a pediatric clinic. Sometimes when I'm rocking Ilara to sleep, I think about the breath Chloe learned to steady, the breath meant to carry her away from me. Now I use my own steady breath to sing lullabies. They said the prenatal yoga was for our future. In a twisted, terrible way, they were right. It forged the future, one where I am both mother and father, where my love is not a foundation to build on, but a fortress to keep her safe, and where the only serenity we need is found in the quiet, truthful dark of her nursery, far away from the sacred spaces built on lies.